So in 1966, you're 14 years old. You're at a family-friendly daytime event. You're speaking to a person who's got a considerable profile, whose name we won't mention here.
No.
And you're subject to a rape. Now, that was a terrible event, and there's no need for us to go through it here now. What I'm kind of interested in is, how did you overcome this? Like, this 14-year-old girl being subjected to this terrible event. Would you mind talking us through that?
Okay, yes, it was a pretty traumatic day. I had been to the event with my father. He was with me, and my girlfriend. And, you know, we just went around with our autograph books, and, you know, because we're just kids. And we were getting autographs. And anyway, long story short, well, probably not that long a story, really, but it kind of lured me into the bushes, which was really only a few meters away. And anyway, the rape took place, right? And I was a very innocent child, really, because we were brought up as Jehovah's Witnesses. So, and also I didn't have a mother, as my adoptive mother died when I was a baby. So I'd had no sex education to speak of. So I really didn't know what was happening, and I knew it was bad, and I knew that I couldn't tell anybody. But before I had a chance to sort of deal with the trauma of that, 3 days later, I lost fingers on my left hand in a lawnmower. So I was in hospital with the loss of my fingers. So you can imagine what that trauma was, over and above what had just happened. Also, that same year, I'm actually, while I was in hospital, I got a letter. My father came in with a letter from my biological mother saying that she was living in Sydney and wanted to meet me. So before that transpired, this would happened in late November in 1966, right? So while I was in hospital, he came in with the letter. She wanted to meet me. She was down in Sydney. And then I found out I had a half brother. So he came to Gatton, where I was living, and I met my half brother. I already had 2 adoptive sisters, older than me. So I met him. And then before the year was out, on my 15th birthday, which was on the 27th of December, I was in Sydney meeting my biological mother. And I never met my biological father. He was a Dutchman. And so, yeah, I'm exhausted just thinking about that year, because I think, you know, I think of the events kind of not as me, but as that little girl that was, you know. I mean, it was me, but I feel for the little girl that I was, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. Was there anything in particular that helped get you through this? Those.
Do you know what? We'd had a pretty tough upbringing. We certainly, you know, weren't born with silver spoons in our mouth. There's a tough streak in me, and you just carry on with life. But I will say this: you just do what you got to do, and life happens, you know, and you just have to deal with it, or you don't. But fortunately I was able to. But now you don't realize what effect it has on you until later on in life. And I know now, psychoanalyzing a bit, I suppose, why I have certain traits that I have: insecurity, jealousy, you know, stuff that affects personal relationships. I'm not good at relationships. And I think that's why, because of what happened to me when I was a kid. Trust issues, you know. I often say to people, I wouldn't wish me on anybody.
But for me, the really magnificent part of that is, okay, you know, there's a certain degree of damage there, and you've acknowledged that, but you still didn't let that define you. Yeah. And to me, that's just incredible, because I've seen from my old job. I've seen that degree of damage just go on to define people. It becomes, that event goes on to become the thing that just completely dominates their life, which is a repeating and never-ending tragedy. You didn't let that happen, and you've gone on to some amazing things, like you worked for Good Morning Australia in the media. You're an award-winning disc jockey yourself. You're a blueswoman through and through, and you've had some other interesting jobs. Now, I want to discuss them, but before we move on to the really positive side of things, you did reveal this. You did reveal this to the media, and with your permission, I'll put the hyperlink into the interview afterwards.
Yeah.
What was your experience like with the mainstream media?
Well, the guy that interviewed me, I've known for a long time. I've known since Good Morning Australia, and I trusted him. Now, whether I was very disappointed with the overall interview that they put to air. The purpose of the interview, what I was told, was not to divulge who did it, but how it affected me in my life and through my life.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't happen in the interview, in my opinion. Apart from that, they put footage up that really, they put some footage of a concert up. I think some huge concert in America. What was the one back at Woodstock?
Woodstock.
It looked like Woodstock. Well, I can tell you it was nothing like Woodstock that day. So it gave a false impression, and then I got really bullied, by the media. Oh, well, where was her parents? Why didn't she go to the police? Well, hey, you know what it might have been like going to the police when you're 14 years old in a country town with a religious background, and you're even scared to let people know what happened to you, let alone go and report it, kind of thing. So it's really, it's just, it was a sad state of affairs, and I suppose.
So it seems that they were more after the sensational, because it started off as like this is going to rock the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Well, you've kind of missed the entire point, really, haven't you?
Absolutely. So I wasn't happy with it. Yeah, no, I wasn't happy. And then when the bullying started, it started because of the way that it was produced and put together. That was a part of the reason. I mean, there might have been people out there that, why come out now and say it and blah, blah, all that bullshit stuff. Yeah, anyway. Oh, by the way, that aside, I have since given a full statement to the police, and that took several weeks to go through all that, actually. But because of the perpetrator and where he is and how famous he is and all that, that probably would have ended up destroying me, because he would have, he would have had the best lawyers you can get. They would have destroyed me. Yeah. Wasn't worth it.
Other than to make the observation that it's a courageous and difficult thing to do, I'll think we'll leave it on that. But so, actually, really quickly before we'll link it towards moving forward. So you've gone on to become the green room lady at Good Morning Australia.
Yeah.
And we'll explain to people what that is very shortly. But what that meant was famous guests coming on. You're bringing these people in and making them feel better and all that kind of stuff. This person was on Good Morning Australia and confronted. Now, I bet that was a bit awkward.
Well, yeah, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Sydney, but back in those days, I was a producer for the Reporter. And so we would go out to like the Seabull Townhouse, which was one of the favourite, places where a lot of the big stars stayed. So we got this interview at the Seville Townhouse. In the meantime, I'd already told the reporter, Barsha, her name was Barsha, what had happened. And we didn't go there to confront him. You know, we went there to do our job. And I just had photos, some black and white photos from the day that it happened. And at the end of the interview, when you do the noddies and the two shots and all that sort of stuff, and you just talk about nothing, and she said, "Well, oh, where are you from again?" And then, you know, she turned to me and said, "Oh, you're from up that way, aren't you, Irene?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, haven't you got some photos?" So I brought out these photos, and he's just sitting there, must have been like shitting himself, you know, and tapping his feet. Nothing more was said. Nothing else. We didn't confront him. All we did was show him the photos, and he just sat there, very uncomfortable, tapping his feet. But it was sort of, I always felt at the time, it was like an exorcism, you know. Okay, I've been holding on to this all these years, maybe 20 years. And so then to come face to face with him again, it was just, yeah, I think we handled it pretty well, actually.
Well, I think you've handled the entire thing very, very well, considering the circumstances. But all right. So, green room lady, what does that mean? And tell us some secrets from being a green room lady.
The secrets of the green room lady. Well, I started off as a green room lady, which means get a call, your guest is here, go downstairs to reception, take the guest up to makeup, then take them into the green room, offer them tea or coffee or whatever, and then you take them to the studio when you know it's their time to go on, wait for them, and then take them back out, and then escort them back down to reception. So you get to know a few. Well, I got to meet so many people from all walks of life, and not just entertainment, of course. You know, we're talking all sorts of people, actors and astronauts and royalty. You know, it just goes on and on and on and on. Yeah. So then once I started at Good Morning Australia, first off, that's right, I became Joe Morrissey's personal assistant.
Wow.
Yeah, I still stayed with the green room because that was just like morning. You get up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and well, yeah, or maybe 4 o'clock. But yeah, it's an early start, very early start, because I think from memory the show used to go to air from 6 till 9 or something, and she used to get tickets to everything, opening nights and whatever. And she's always busy or whatever. She said, "Oh, hand me a invitation to this. Oh, can you go on my behalf?" Blah blah blah. So I that's how it happened. And she'd send me along with her husband, mind you. No, it wasn't like that. But
No.
you know, yeah, David will pick you up and he'll take you there, which was great. So I met lots of other people that way, and then I ended up becoming the producer for the vet segment, for all the animals and whatever. So we had a vet segment, and I loved that because I love animals. So that was great. And then I started, they got me to produce, that was the week that was, which was which was what they'd run at the end on the Friday show. So it would be snippets of everything that had gone to air that day, and just start off with the serious stuff and then get into the funny stuff. So you got everybody laughing their head off by the end of it. So I did that for a long time. That was the week that was. So that was great.
So you've seen people at their best and their worst.
What everyone probably never realised is that the two guest hosts hated each other. So there was more drama on set than there was, well, not when they were going to air, but in between the commercial breaks, they hated each other.
So who's that? Kerry Ann and whom?
Kerry Ann Kennelly and Gordon Elliott. Yeah.
Oh, scandal.
Yeah. So moving on to the guest, my absolute favourite guest of all time was Lorne Green
Oh,
from Bonanza.
yeah.
He was just the nicest guy. And he was getting on a bit then, but because he was quite tall, you know, and he walked with so much grace, but he also had a sense of humor, because the 10 photographer came in to take photos, and I always got a photo whenever I could. And so we're about to have this photo together, and he put his hand over my face, and just to be funny, we had another photo. But it's one of my favourite photos, and but he was one of my favourite guests. Steve Cropper, from the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
He was one of our guests, and it happened that I was going over to America not too long after he came in. So he gave me his contact number. He said, call me when you get there and I'll take you to lunch. So, and I ended up staying at the Chateau Marmont, which is where, the Chateau Marmont in Hollywood. Well, that's where Belushi died, John Belushi, yeah. So Gordon had organised that actually for me. He said, oh, you got to stay at the Chateau Marmont. Anyway, so that's where Steve picked me up from to take me to lunch. And he said, oh, because he was obviously really good friends with John Belushi, who was in the Blues Brothers band. And he said, oh, the last time I was here, I got the first call that he'd died, So he said, I was the first person here. So he said, brings back, pretty awful memories, Anyway, he took me to this lovely place, and I'm like going, all these famous people coming in and out of the place. And I think we had one lady, I can't remember her name now, but I mean, she was famous at the time, but she sat with us at lunch, and so that was lovely. He was lovely. And I since I got to catch up with him again at the Byron Bay Blues Festival in what was that, the last one, 2019 or 2018 that I went to? Anyway, so we've got a before photo and an after photo together, like.
Because you're right into the blues.
Yeah.
The first question, did you find the blues, or did the blues find you?
I think the blues found me. However, I think it was pretty much, it was in there. I was named after
Good night, Irene.
Red Belly's Good Night, Irene. So I was named after that song. So that was a good start, I guess. And then when I was really into music when I was 14, and I was a Stones girl. And then, of course, as time progressed, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and a lot of people, that's all the blues is. If they listen to my show, they'd realise that, like, I get like hundreds of new releases a week that I go through. Yeah.
Well, see, that's it. And we're going to plug the show because I'm a great fan. I have to declare an interest. I too was a presenter at 89.1 FM, and I was a bit of a fanboy. Besides the fact that you do have this wide variety of what you define as blues, and that matters. How you categorise music matters. It really does.
Yeah.
The second thing is, like, here's this lady in North Queensland who's getting these incredible guests.
Because my biggest fan base is in America, I have to say, and kind of Europe and whatever, but not so much here. But,
with the obvious exception of me, Irene, that clearly needs to be stated, but do go on.
When 2013 came, and I'd had my show already for about, I think I started late 2010, and I decided, okay, it's time. And I'd made a lot of contacts by then, and really it started by me putting the playlists up, and all these people realizing that I was playing their music, so I decided to head to America. It was about a 6-week trip. I tried to plan it as best I could, and people just, oh, you've got to come and stay with me, or we're going to meet up on this and that, and I got over there. They treated me like a rock star. It was amazing, And I did. I stayed with the Rusty Wright Band up in Flint, Michigan, and one of my artists heard that I was coming to Chicago, and he said, "Well, there's going to be a documentary, big opening night anyway, of
Okay.
of the Born in Chicago documentary. Okay, so it all went right back to all those Chicago bluesmen and whatever. He said, however, the night before there's going to be an all-star concert with all of these artists and many more at one of the theaters. Would you like to go to that? Well, yeah, you bet.
No, I don't want to go and drink beer with really famous people at a really cool. No.
Well, not only that, I got invited backstage. So there I am. I'm sitting there with Alvin Bishop, Charlie Musselwhite, Harvey Mandel, Eric Burden, Gary Malabar, who was the drummer. He was the drummer that night. He was the drummer with Steve Miller Band. That's his sort of claim to fame in some ways, I suppose. That was just, amazing. And then the guy that introduced me to everything, Greg, he was a good friend of Gary Malabar. So we all went out to dinner afterwards and everything. Although trying to find a place to eat at 1 o'clock in the morning in Chicago was not as easy as you might think it is. And while I was in Chicago also, I was a special guest. They put on a special concert for me at the Waterhole Blues Bar. Yeah, and then we had a television appearance as well, and went to this amazing juke joint, probably the oldest juke joint and maybe the only original juke joint left in America. I don't know, but it was owned by Gibson, and he was like 90, in his 90s then, and because he was a black man, and when he was young, he got beaten up by the Ku Klux Klan. They broke his fingers, smashed his guitar. And anyway, so Gib, he rose above all that. Yeah. And he was there, the most beautiful man. He got me up on stage when he performed with him. He was still performing, and had me up on stage there standing next to him. And look, honestly, there's just so many wonderful things. And so that was, but he died a couple of years ago, and that broke my heart. I think he must have been almost 100, when he died. But yeah, but he always remembered me. He said, "Oh, you're the little blonde girl from Australia."
So that's how you're getting all these big names on your show. It's through those contacts through them.
Kind of, sort of. A lot of the people that represent the artists and know I play their music would offer me interviews, and a bit of both, I guess. It's just I just became a well-known name over there, and well, also not just from that trip, by the way. I was back at the Blues Music Awards in Memphis in 2015 and 2016. In 2016, I went to the Big Blues Bender in Las Vegas, which is just 5 nights of blues all day, all night, like so many acts. 2016, I went to the Big NAMM convention in Anaheim.
So you've really, the theme I'm getting here is, local far north Queensland girl coming good in the States, and kind of in so much as a prophet is never recognised in their own hometown. Like, I'm a fanboy, but you're not getting the love over here that you're getting in the States. Like you're.
Oh, I actually, the first Blues Music Awards I went to in Memphis, they have a little drinkies beforehand on another level. So, and this guy came, "Oh, hi, Irene, how are you?" And I'm like, oh, who are you? People were recognising me. And I went to the Rum Boogie that same trip it was, and once again, I had people recognising me, and it was like I was very flattered. Oh, the other thing that happened in Memphis, which was wonderful, at the Women in Blues event, I was a guest speaker. They asked me to be a guest speaker at the Women in Blues event in Memphis. So, yeah.
Wow. And you've had songs written about you.
Yeah, I've got a few.
So tell me about that.
Well, there's 3 different songs that have been written with the title of Driving Home with the Blues, which is the name of my show. One two by local artists, I have to say. Lucky Phil, he wrote one, which is great with all local musicians. It's a cracker of a song, actually. And Greg Dwyer, who is an artist, as in painting artist, who dabbles in music, he wrote one too, and it's another ripper. And then Garrington T. Jones from the UK, but used to spend a lot of time here, he wrote one. So there's three Driving Home with the Songs album. And then the last time I was in the States in 2018, I flew to Los Angeles, and then I went over to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and a friend of mine, Mick Colassa, also a blues singer, picked me up in Memphis. We went back to his place, or one of his places. He had a place in Clarksdale, an old art gallery. And then my blues presenter friend from Alabama came up, and then another blues artist from Greenville, Mississippi, he came up. So we all hung out together, just had the best time. And Gil from Alabama brought a bottle of moonshine. I'd had moonshine in Alabama at Kip's place, by the way. That was the first time I had.
Like, really quickly, I hate to interrupt the flow, but what is moonshine? Like, is it vodka?
Oh, it's just like really hard spirits, white spirits. Like
so it's just it's kind of like it's all refined white spirit.
Yeah.
All right, so it's the sort of stuff they make rum out of, and
yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean,
all
the one I had, like, I think back in the day, like they had like it was homemade distillery kind of stuff, anyway. But the moonshine that Gil brought up from
so you
Alabama,
went to Copperhead Road when it comes to drinking. You went to, besides walking in Memphis, you're drinking at Copperhead Road, really, when it comes right down to it.
One of my friends from LA who looked after me when I was LA, he said, Mississippi Moonshine Mama. And I'm like, yep, that'll do. I'm going to steal that. And then Mick wrote a song called Mississippi Moonshine Mama. And
wow.
So that's all how that came about. But then a couple of years ago, because I've got my other show, Rock and Blues Down Under, and another friend of mine put something up about, oh, you're a little rock and blues girl, you are. And he said, wait, I'm going to write a song about that. So he wrote a song called Little Rock and Blues Girl. So that's how I became the Little Rock and Blues Girl. He's from Nashville. And then, so when I went over to Las Vegas to the big blues bender, I had met at one of the Blues Music Award. It's not just one event. There's 4 or 5 days of music going on, and I met Gil had introduced me to Hurricane Ruth, and I'm like, oh my God, Hurricane Ruth! I just love your stuff, and I played it a lot. So we bonded, and we became really good friends. So we ended up sharing a room at the big blues bender in Las Vegas. Anyway, it's 5 days of just like, it's full on. And when I go to big events like that, I don't drink because you could never, yeah. I don't have the stamina,
No, yeah.
But on the last night, I don't know if you've heard of Bob Margolin, Steady Rollin' Bob Margolin. Yeah. He took me under his wing. We became friends way back in 2013 as well, and whatever. Anyway, so he always looked after me and always thought I was a bit precious. Anyway, so the last night, I did an interview with him while I was in there as well. But he said, so there's a big party, big backstage party on the last night of the bender. And he said, you're going to come along. And I said, but I don't have the right wristband. I'm not sort of entitled to go. He said, just follow me. Which I did, and nobody stopped. Steady Rolling Bob Margolin, So we went backstage, and they had all the best wines and vegetarian food, which suited me beautifully. But all this, so I just drank and ate and drank and I talked to all these amazing artists. Had all these photos.
So you really are. You're a bit of a big deal over there, and you've won some awards over here for your DJing. So you've basically told us about your background. So you're from Gatton, And it was a bit tough. Like you've hinted there that your dad lost his wife, son, and there was some toughness with the farm and stuff too. But he wouldn't give up his girl. That's his adopted girl. That's just amazing. And then we've got these things that you've gone through and come out the other side with a platinum record, if I can make the observation. So for you, what's the takeaway? Like, what's the lesson learned, and what would you like to impart on to our listeners?
My first memories of life were living in a rat-infested bull shed. That was a kind of the first home that I remember anyway, while he built another corrugated iron shack. Anyway, and we'd have to walk miles to school and all that sort of stuff. And we had a snake around the rafter all the time. But if it was just a green snake, but a couple of times a black red belly would get in. And of course, us two girls were pretty much, my two older sisters, were pretty much there by ourselves the whole time, out in the sticks, because my father lost all his money and ended up having to go and work as a bridge builder. So he had to go away all the time, camping on bridges. So we were left to our own devices quite a bit. But my older sister Grace, she's the hero in my family. You know that song, "The Wind Beneath My Wings," the Bette Midler song, as it happens. She's the wind beneath my wings. And I think the other thing is, because I grew up the way I did grow up, nothing was handed to us on a platter, that's for sure. But I think that's good. And also, even though I'm not a religious person at all now, but I come from pretty high morals, as the family I had pretty high morals, and I think that was a good thing. I think that was a good way to be brought up, and whatever I did achieve, I achieved just by getting out there and doing what I can. And I left school when I was 14, so I mean, after I lost my fingers, I just didn't go back to school again. And I also had a job, got myself a little job in downtown Gatton, and so I just plodded along, doing the best I could. But as I said, it hasn't all. The end result is that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty insecure when it comes to relationships. I'm not good at relationships, so stay away from me. And then I'm good.
This idea of not letting this resentment and bitterness be the dominant factor in your life, and I think that's cool. And obviously being a JW kind of helped with that, and facing adversity.
Yeah.
So look, that actually is that's a really good takeaway. So, but unless there's anything you want to anything extra, we might kind of wrap it up on that.
Oh, well, I'll say one thing. If I had to live my life over again, I don't think I'd have the energy.